What happens when a wife and a mother, an artist, and a stand-up comedian goes on the road for the first time on a tour bus, sleeps in a pod? Listen to find out.
What's happening today? What are you thinking about? When you're walking down the street, is your head in a cloud? Don't you want to know what's going on? Let's go! Checking in with Mary Lynn. Checking in with Mary Lynn. Checking in with Mary Lynn. Let's check in with Mary Lynn.
When I ran into Fred Armisen, the great Fred Armisen, who I knew in the 90s, and then I didn't see him for years and years, I ran into him at Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank, and he asked me, is there any way you would want to tour with me? And it seemed crazy because I'm a mom and a wife, I have pets, I have carpool and lunches, and I said, let me think about it. But in my gut, I knew it was a yes. I knew I had to make it happen because it's Fred Armisen and we're going to go on the road and I get to do shows and share in his audience and be his special guest. So I said yes. The next thing you know, I've signed up for a 10-night different city every night tour across the country, across the United States of America. I fly to meet the bus in Omaha, Nebraska. It's February. There's snow on the ground. What the hell have I gotten myself into? There's a day room. You take a shower. He's playing at a rock club. A rock club? I do stand-up. I do the talkies. How am I going to keep their attention when they're slammed in there? Standing room only. Sightline, the sound, echoey. I mean, he's a drummer. His whole thing is comedy for musicians and everyone is welcome. He's got music to keep them along and also a wealth, a body of work that people are excited to see. I'm still like people wondering, what's this lady doing here? Who is she? This mom and this wife and this actress is standing on stage doing stand-up during my Fred Armisen show. What have I gotten myself into? I arrive in Omaha. I go to my day room. Everything is upside down. You go to a hotel during the day. In my mind, I've just arrived Omaha. I don't really need the day room, but I'm prepping. I go, tonight we sleep in the pod. We drive all night. The pod is in the bus, on the tour bus. We're like rock stars. I don't know if I'm ready for this. We go. The first show is pretty fantastic. I'm not used to the energy traveling out into the room and floating away to the ceiling. It's not tight and close and intimate like a comedy club. It's rock and roll, baby. The floor is sticky. The air is hazy. The people are pumped up. And it goes pretty well. After that first show in Omaha, people are lovely. Omaha has got that real working class feel from what I could tell. It was freezing cold and snowing, so I just went from the hotel to the venue. But the people were nice. The audience was beyond nice. They were happy that we were there, that we stopped in Omaha. So after the first show, the night is winding down. It's time to go on the pod. Call time on the pod. It's time to go on the bus. It's all about prepping to sleep in the pod. And then I hear there's bus rules, which are don't poop on the bus during the middle of the night. Now, I don't think I've ever had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, but for some reason, when you get told that that's a rule, that you can't go on the bus, you realize that you're held captive to this bus and you're being taken on a trip where there's a amount of freedom, but there's also some limitations. Like if you have to go to the bathroom, you go and tell the bus driver And then he pulls over. Could you imagine getting up in the middle of the night, walking up to the driver and saying, hey, pull this bus over. I got to go to the bathroom. Okay. So that's the rule. And the other rule is keep the door locked, because you don't know when the zombies are going to come and break into your bus. Okay, great. I got it. And then after the show, I've got my suitcase, which goes into the back of the tour bus. That's the way our little team has organized it. We've got a tour manager, sound engineer, Fred, and me. In the back of the bus, we put our stuff in the back. Third quadrant of the bus is the sleeping pods. It's a galleyway of stacked up that you go in there like a little coffin and you close the curtain. There's a little reading light in there. And then the second quadrant is the living room of the bus, where there's snacks, the bathroom, a table. And the first quadrant, of course, is where the driver goes. So we get on the bus and I'm looking like, okay, I think I got this. That's the impression I give. But inside, I have anxiety. I'm starting to feel claustrophobic for the first time in my life when I lay eyes on this pod. I got to get in there. How's this going to go? It's not going to be that bad. I get in and it's pretty bad. It's pretty tight. You can't really sit up all the way. And you close a curtain and you've got a blanket and a pillow, and I sit on my back and cross my arms over my chest like I'm a vampire going to bed. And then the sleeping quarters are sealed off, so it's pitch black. And your people, what if I snore or pass gas? What if I make a noise? What if I talk in my sleep? What if I have a nightmare? What if I roll out of the pod and hit the floor? It's going to be fine. It feels a little bit like camping, if camping were to have walls like a coffin all the way around. But it's got that feel where you're just wrapped up in your sleeping bag and you don't want to leave to go to the bathroom for anything. I mean, just getting up to go pee was something I didn't want to do. Could you imagine telling the driver, hey, I got to go poo, pull over? Anyway, so I'm in the pod. And then fall asleep before the bus starts moving. 45 minutes in, the bus starts moving, and I wake up to the jarring takeoff of the bus. It feels worse than I thought it would. I feel like I'm in a flotation chamber. I can't tell which direction is up, down, backwards, sideways. I quickly remind myself that my feet are facing front, my head is facing back. I am on a bus. There's bumps on the road. I also have to convince myself that for some reason it feels like I'm about to be untethered from the bus and let go. That's just the feeling. Whenever the bus turns or it hits a bump, you feel like you're right on top of it. You're right against the road and you're about to be unhooked and go swerving off, and there's nothing you can do about it, as then your single pod rolls off the edge of a cliff to your death. That's just the feeling as the bus starts driving. But of course, your mind is a wonderful tool. And I just tell myself, this is fine. People do this all the time. The pod is a fine way to sleep. And I eventually go in and out of sleep for the rest of the night. You wake up in the next city. Before you know where you're at, again, you tell yourself, oh, we're in Albuquerque. That's cool. You get out like little church mice. If you hear another curtain open, instinctively you give a courtesy amount of time for that person to go get dressed and scurry off the bus. Or sometimes you're not sure where people are, where you're supposed to go. You might take a peek out the window. Where are we parked? Are we parked behind the club? Are we parked in a street? Are we in a parking garage? I wander out. Now I'm the zombie. And guess what? I just started my period. So I've dropped off in the middle of nowhere in Albuquerque. gotta find a pharmacy, get some maxi pads. I know that's a little personal, but I just want to tell you what the situation's like. I also am hungry and I need coffee. I wander into a 7-Eleven and some guy I ask him what it's like in Albuquerque. And he starts talking about a fight he got into with a homeless guy and how it's a pretty cool place to live. I say, all right, thanks, man. I wander around the street. It's the financial district, but man, it looks empty and depressed. And I start thinking of Breaking Bad, and I'm on foot. I could take an Uber to the cool part of Albuquerque, but also I'm just hungry and I'm a rock star, so this is how it's going to go down for me. My husband and my kid call. They actually call me right as I'm emerging out of the pod. I don't have the time to tell them what this feels like, what the show was like, what it's like to be in this city on this bus, because they're on their way to school and I want to see what's going on with them. I don't want to bombard them, especially when they're just having their day. They don't have the time to hear the ins and outs of what's going on with mom. Not only that, but they're just like, hey, what's up? Like having their morning, like there's nothing to say. And I'm going, do you understand that I was on Fred's show last night for 1,000 people in a rock club. I sold a scrunchie to somebody who hugged me, a scrunchie that says Gail the Snail. I shared the stage with the great Fred Armisen and then slept in a pod. Do you guys even know what's going on? And then had to wrestle a homeless guy to get my maxi pads back from him. I didn't wrestle, but I paid him $5. I don't know. I just made that up. Obviously, you guys, just the feeling of being alone. But on the other hand, everybody on Fred's small support team is great. And Fred himself is a kind, generous, hilarious person. And Rebecca, who's selling the merch, is cool. A couple days go by and she starts to tell me, I start to realize that everyone's there, but everyone's also kind of doing their own thing, You wake up in the pod and you might go eat breakfast. You might sleep in your pod a little bit longer. Hey, it's cool like that. You might go work out. Everybody is there, but they're not there. And I start to like that freedom. The first night I was freaking out about being away from home. Are they going to be okay without me? Yeah, they're going to do their thing. And guess what? I don't have to wake up and do laundry and do dishes and worry about what the next thing in my career is. As the days of the tour go on, my body sort of acclimates to the pod. There's not quite the panic or the claustrophobia. There's a certain special kind of sleep that you get in a pod. It's not like any other sleep. Part of it is deep, and then part of it is being jarred awake, wondering, again, if you're going to roll out into the open road, if your body's just going to roll out. But then you start to enjoy that because it's silly. You have a trust. You have a blind trust in the driver. You have a pact with the rest of the people on the tour. Hey, we're all in this crazy lifestyle. And you know what else? We have a common goal. We get to wake up in a different city, and our goal is to execute the show for that night. So every day that went on, I became closer to the people in the pod and the common goal of the show. I started to enjoy the bus breakfast of rice cake and either peanut butter and banana or avocado. I started to laugh at the challenge of getting in the small bathroom and going pee first thing in the morning and brushing my teeth with the bottled water, but not putting my elbows out too far or else they'd hit the wall. Each new city was a new adventure. There's something very freeing and fun about being in a city for a day and collecting all the sights and the sounds and the images that you can. Sometimes that means sitting in your hotel room for a couple of hours, but even the hotel gives clues away about the city. Is it a refurbished old hotel in Lincoln, Nebraska that's been done in a new kitschy way? A hotel called The Graduate that has Johnny Carson-esque, actually not esque, recreation of the curtains and the font of The Graduate, and a nod to the 50s and 60s, with a plaid carpet and collegiate details throughout the hotel. A hotel where your intellectual curiosity meets your favorite place to stay. In the historic Haymarket district, the lobby of the Graduate Hotel is decked in vibrant greens and warm, rich wood, a nod to Nebraska's vast parklands and grand landscape. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole hotel description, but let me just say they went to great lengths to make this a nod to the past. Wait, what? Talent alone won't make you a success. Neither will being in the right place at the right time unless you are ready. Are you ready? Johnny Carson. This is in the description of what the hotel's like. Do you understand what I'm saying? There's not a lot going on in Lincoln, Nebraska, but somebody has made this little gem of a hotel that you can go when you're visiting colleges that has a top golf, a digital top golf in the hotel, along with craft cocktails. This is adorable. And you get to experience in each new city. Sometimes they're not great hotels. Sometimes the Graduate Hotel seamlessly blend nostalgia associated with college, the convenience, its central location, and really great design. My point is that I'm getting to have these experiences, these little day-to-day experiences in a crash course in that city. And Rebecca, the tour manager, she told me a trick she uses to not get into the rut of load in, load out, show, pod, hotel. She started to go to art museums during her days. And then that just made my mind open and expand, because I didn't have any job but to do the show that night. So I could wake up, find the best coffee shop, find the museum, and I found myself in Houston going to the Rothko Chapel and sitting in there and contemplating these beautiful Mark Rothko paintings that I haven't thought about since I was in art school. And I forget about my bills at home. I forget about the emails I haven't returned because I'm on the road, man. It doesn't matter that my husband and my kid aren't really talking to me on the phone because they're just having their regular life and they're going, "Hey mom, everything's good." They don't know where my mind has been, what corridors of the city, what audience members that I've experienced. We went to the famous Kane Ballroom in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We saw a part in the wall where Sid Vicious had punched a hole because this venue was famous for the Sex Pistols coming through there on their first tour to America. We went to First Avenue in Minneapolis, another famous rock venue for all these groundbreaking bands. What I was worried about, I embraced, and I learned how to play the rock rooms, and I got to see these different audiences. We went to New Orleans. We went to Pontiac, Michigan, where I'm from, and it was so fun to be around the energy of where I grew up. Pontiac was kind of a depressed town just outside of Detroit that's making a comeback. These little storefronts and this coffee place. I did get into a bit of an argument with this hipster that started his coffee place, but he didn't want to pay for storefront rent, so it was tucked in there. And 3 of our crew members that very morning were looking for the coffee spot and gave up because his sandwich board was confusing and you didn't know to walk through the doors and find him. And I said, hey, dude, you got to put some arrows on there. And he was telling me about the oat milk he got. And I said, that's great, but nobody knows you're back here. And I interacted with all these bros, and he said, I'm doing enough if they can't find it. And, I got involved with him. I got to see some of my high school friends that I haven't seen in forever. My mom and my dad and my brother-in-law and my cousin, they all came to the show, and that was an amazing experience. Going to Pontiac, Michigan, and seeing this town that's kind of struggling to stay vibrant. It reminded me of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania a bit. When we went there, Bethlehem had one of the most largest steel manufacturing facilities that was abandoned. It was massive, but that was the place. And I got to be there, and I kept thinking of Billy Joel's song, Allentown, and walking around this like storybook town, again, kind of downtrodden, but still got a lot of heart, and the people are proud to be from there. And it's got all that history of, this is the place where the I-beam was designed, that built our skyscrapers at the Industrial Revolution, that built the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, this is an amazing experience, and we got to perform in the art center for these donors. So these people that had money, but they were in this place that didn't have money, but they were keeping the arts alive. And I thought, this is it. This is the life for me. I could be on tour everywhere. I mean, all the time. This is the new me. I come somewhere and I give the people a show, and we just keep rolling. I mean, my family, I don't even remember who they are anymore. And then the next time I FaceTimed with my husband and my kid, it was at a baseball game, and my heart swelled, and it's almost like I forgot who I was. And when he tried to show me the game, for some reason the iPhone was a little bit fuzzy and I couldn't see it, and I was looking for my kid. Someone made the shot. Was that him? I couldn't make out his jersey, and then the camera was bouncing, and I wasn't there, and I wanted to be there, and I wanted to see him out on the court. And I started to cry, and I said, well, FaceTime me later. And it wasn't until after the show, and I was FaceTiming and showing, see, there's our sound engineer, Scott, and there's them loading out, and there's Anna. We talked about how the audience was a little uptight tonight, but when we have a bond, because we're on the road together, and my son was just staring at me on the FaceTime, and I'm trying to give him a feeling of what it's like to be out on stage, and we're loading out, and I said, this is backstage, and these two drunk people were like, oh man, you're so funny, and I felt so proud. I was like a rock star. I said, yeah, thank you. And I see my son, and I see him smile a little bit, but then that's covered up by confusion. Like, who are these people? Why are they talking to my mom? And then this woman's talking, and she's being very effusive, but it's off-putting. She's going, oh, your mom is so great. You're so lucky to have her. And I'm looking at him, and I'm going, he doesn't have me. You have me. I'm standing in the street with you. What the hell am I doing right now? I walked away from them. I hung up with my son, and I actually tripped on a part in the cement. I was just walking normally, but for some reason I did one of those falls that I've never done this in my life. But a serious, the kind of fall where I was like, usually if I trip, I catch myself, but this one was like, I looked up like, hey, what happened? I hit my ankles, I hit my hips, I hit my wrists, it was just a down. I went straight down and then had to recover, and I burst into tears. What am I doing? I'm not a rock star. I'm away from home. I'm away from my family. I love being dropped off in Portland, Maine, and wandering down to the port area and seeing all those boats docked, and seeing the lobster cages and the people working and putting a fresh coat of paint on the dock. And for as much as I can imagine myself living Louisville, Kentucky, seeing the history, seeing them respond to you talk about horses and you can feel them swell. Something as simple as that. It's like, whoa, this this is a big deal here. And you see the history of that, and of the Kentucky Derby. You see how the city grows around that and what it means to them. And I imagine, oh, what if I bought a little house in Louisville, Kentucky, Columbus, Ohio, a progressive audience, not what I was expecting. I didn't know that this was one of the best cities in the United States, that it was up and coming for tech. I didn't know that they were going to be so savvy and full of so much energy. And the show takes place took place in the venue is an old church that is now a music venue. This is one of the coolest places I've ever performed. And I love Fred's sense of humor and being a part of his show. But when I fell and I cried, it brought it up. And after I wasn't at my son's basketball game, it's like I remembered that I need to be home and that I can have a life that's a tour life and pretend to be Willie Nelson on the road again, or Bob Seger, just turning the page, playing the crowd again. I don't know the lyrics, but that it's great to have this experience, but it's also great to go back home, and that I'm lucky enough to do them both. So, thanks.